Hello and welcome to Hank Games Without Hank. The AFC Wimbledon Wimbly Womblys are in their third to last game of their opening season. They are 3 points atop League 2, which means that I have to win or tie this game to continue being certain that I will be atop League 2 next week. There, you can see it right there. 43 games played, 3 games left. We're 3 points up. Today's topic comes from Project for Awesome donor Thomas, who writes, I'd like to hear about how to deal with everyday racism and sexism, but he's talking about how to deal with it as an ally. And I think the number one way that we can deal with it is by finding ways to listen better to women and people of color. And so I thought that what would be cool would be, instead of me trying to give advice on something that isn't directly, that I don't directly experience, if instead I just let Rosianna host this video, because it's something that she does directly experience. So I'm going to get out of my chair, and Rosianna is going to talk about that for a while, and then you'll just hear me screaming in the background if I am lucky enough to score. Okay, bye. Literally getting out of the chair, and Rosianna's literally...
What you can't see is John scrambling out underneath the microphone and us getting electric shocked by the same thing. I think it's important to first start with the idea of raising up other people's voices. That's something that I've really had to learn to do over the years, and I think that we all could benefit from, because it's hard when you experience something very personally and you feel like, even if you're part of a group, so I very much feel like I experience sexism on a day-to-day basis, not in this office so much, but on a day-to-day basis on any level, whether that's from street harassment to internet comments and things like that. So it's very easy for me to think that my experience is not only indicative of the exact experience of every other woman, but also that my story needs to be told more than anyone else's. It's been a hard lesson to kind of draw yourself away from and start listening to other voices of people who may not have an internet platform, or even if they do, may not have the reach that I do. And it's the other side of it as well, is that the other side of it is that it's not only a one-at-a-time issue. You mentioned in your question, for example, or I think John mentioned when he was asking it, women and people of colour, but of course there are women of colour, and they face the biggest brunt of sexism and racism and much of the other prejudices as well. There are lots of different things that come into it. The language you speak, the fact that you can understand English as I'm speaking. It's difficult because there's so much, I don't want to say there's so much going wrong in the world, but there's so many problems that we haven't quite figured out how to deal with, and also there are a lot of people who don't acknowledge that those problems exist. So it's kind of like sometimes, where do I start? And it's very tempting to start by trying to shout the loudest about the problems that are happening, rather than necessarily taking a moment to think whose voices aren't being represented in this, and is the best representation of those voices me talking about it. Because sometimes it is. Sometimes when you're having a conversation with your family and you don't have all the women in the world in that room with you, and you don't have people from all backgrounds in that room with you, and you can't be inclusive in that particular situation, you do have to talk about it with your to the best of your knowledge. So sometimes it can be the best way to do it, but I think the way in which we talk about these issues as we understand them is a huge part of the process of making things better and more inclusive. The other thing I would say is that not only for people who identify as allies, but for absolutely everyone, we have to understand that we're going to be wrong. And it's not a binary situation of I am right and I am wrong, even if you miss goals.
You should probably explain, since I'm playing so terribly, that I am playing, not you.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not playing.
Yeah. So nobody thinks that you're this bad at FIFA.
There's no women on the pitch, so I'm not playing. So it's difficult because it's so, when someone says something that you find so frankly offensive, it's completely impossible sometimes to imagine yourself ever saying that thing. But I look back in the past few years, and there are some things that I've said that now I just hang my head in shame and embarrassment of even thinking about them. And I think that has a lot to do with a cultural situation of believing that you can be either on the right side or the wrong side of an issue, and denying how complex those issues are.
So frustrating.
almost as complex as goal scoring on FIFA 16. So, I mean, one thing that I think is really important is not to deny how complex the issues are, but then also not to see that as something that, I don't know, depresses you too much. That even though there are problems with, for example, racism and class discrimination within the suffragist movement, that is not to say that it was entirely bad or that it was entirely good by any means. So I think a lot about being a good ally is having an open-minded approach to things while also having an emphasis on supporting the voices of people who aren't being heard. And if you're not finding those voices, if you're not seeing them on your Twitter feed, if you're not hearing from them in your day-to-day life, then it's important to either go out and look for them or find a way in which you can be a sort of vessel through which those voices come out. Like, do you speak another language? Is there an opinion that you can, is there an article you can read and pull quotes from and translate and share it with other people? Is there a way that you can become a sort of distributor of things without trying to sound like you're an authority on things? I think we always have to be a little bit humble when talking about problems in the world, because we don't, at no time can we look at what's happening to absolutely everyone and say definitively what's going on. And I think it's difficult. It's absolutely a difficult thing to do. When it comes to being an ally online, I would also say that, especially in comments and things like that, when you see bad comments, it's so tempting to dive in and attack the person who's making or leaving racist, sexist, homophobic, transphobic comments online because you're just so furious at what they're saying. On the other hand, how do you deal with the fact that we have a comment system that rewards engagement with those kinds of comments? Like, it completely privileges the outrage discussion. It's completely broken comment system, in the sense that it doesn't have any idea of the value of a comment and the worth of a comment. And that's not to say that if you have gone and defended someone in comments that you're being a bad ally. By no means is that true, but I think we just have to think about the effect it will have on the situation. Is it the most helpful thing we can do? Or is it better to go to the good comments and say, I love what you said here. This is fantastic. I would love to see more things from you. Do you have a YouTube channel? Do you have a Twitter that I can follow? Like, is there any way that I can be more part of the discussion with you? Or just keeping an eye on those comments and looking out for those people. Another thing that I would say is that, again, it's quite easy to only comment on people's videos that have like hundreds and hundreds of comments on them. But where people who have those discussion videos about their experiences often have like 2 or 3 subscribers. And if you go and leave a supportive comment there on their videos, you're showing them that their voices are really valuable as well. And I think that that's an important thing. And you also find some great voices in there as well. I don't know, what else about sexism? I think, and also like in day-to-day life, there's the issue of street harassment is, I think, a big one. And how you can help your friends feel safe, but also respond to incidents of street harassment is something that you have to figure out what's most helpful to them by talking to your friends who experience it. I think that for some people, it is helpful to call up the company of someone who's calling out of their van to harass you, or calling from a construction site to harass you. For some people, they just don't want that. For some people, it's helpful for you to understand that, they don't like it when a man walks behind them. And then you learn, well, maybe I should cross the street. And even though it can make you feel bad because you haven't necessarily done anything wrong, it's just understanding those kinds of fears and resisting the urge to get really defensive. But and then don't get angry at yourself when you do get defensive as well, I would say. Like, it's very difficult. We're bringing someone on. Who are you bringing on?
Beer and Bowman, we're swapping out, and then we're going to take off John Green, who's had a terrible game, and bring on the Monserrati and Messi. It's all substitutions at once. The classic, classic move, just like the pros. I actually saw an AFC Wimbledon match recently where they did just that. I felt very proud. I felt like I was just watching the reenactment of FIFA 16.
Losing, right?
Yeah, completely. I think, another thing I would say, and I know we're wrapping up the game here pretty much, but is that you have to do what you can to let people know that they kind of deserve to be in the space that they occupy, because minorities, and especially minorities that face the brunt of intersection, they are told their entire lives that they have to be either more invisible or that they're hyper visible, and there is something that stops them from being the sort of invisible people that like the straight white man is allowed to be. And I think just being cognizant of that gives you a greater understanding of what day-to-day life is like. And yeah, I don't know, I mean, there's a lot to think about, and it'd be interesting to see what you guys say in the comments and what you think, and if there's anything that you strongly disagree with as well. I'm open to that too. But if anyone has any other advice for allies as well, then also leave that in the comments too. I'd love to hear from you.
We're going to try to win here in the last 2 minutes. Dang it! I'm so bad at this freaking video game. It's actually more frustrating when you do the commentary, because your commentary is better. And then my video game playing looks by comparison even worse.
It's beautiful. I love it.
Now we're just playing for the draw.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh no! Anything but this! Oh god, that guy's a terrible haircut. He's got to live with that. We've all got our burdens to bear. That's the end of the game. Thank you, Rosianna.
Thanks for having me.
Best wishes.